I knew something was wrong the moment my truck rolled around the last bend of the gravel road, where there should have been open space and a clear path to my 25 acres. There stood a massive steel gate, freshly installed, gleaming under the afternoon sun like a slap to the face. Bolted right in the center was a bright white sign, HOA residents only, private road. My road, my legal easement, a road my parents had used for over 40 years, suddenly private. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then Karen stepped out from behind the gate, 50 years old, blonde, holding a clipboard like it was a royal scepter. She smirked and said, "You'll need to find another route. This community has rules now." That was the moment I realized the HOA had no idea what kind of disaster they had just unleashed on themselves. Before we jump into the full story, go ahead and comment where you're watching from, your city and your local time, and if you enjoy real HOA justice, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I didn't grow up with much, but I grew up with land, real land, the kind you feel under your boots, the kind you inherit not just on paper, but in your bones. My parents bought our 25-acre property back in 1978, when I was just a toddler crawling between wild blackberry bushes and stacks of lumber. My father kept for future projects that never happened. Back then, the area wasn't a neighborhood, wasn't a subdivision, and certainly wasn't a place for HOAs to sprout like invasive weeds. It was just wide open, rural country, a few scattered farms, and miles of peace. The only road to our property was a simple gravel path cutting across Old Man Fletcher's land. Fletcher was a tough, sunburned farmer with hands like sandpaper and a heart bigger than his barn. My father once tried to pay him for the right to use that road, and Fletcher waved him off like my dad had offered him a bag of moldy bread. "Take it," he said. "You're good people, and someday, when this place gets crowded, you'll be glad everything's written down." And he meant it, because he didn't just give my parents permission, he signed a permanent, recorded easement, giving our family full access to the road forever, including rights for utilities, water, power, communications, everything a modern home would ever need. That easement was ironclad, filed, stamped, recorded, set in legal stone long before HOAs became the neighborhood tyrants they are today. For more than 40 years, life was simple. My mother maintained her garden, my father fixed tractors that didn't need fixing, and I grew up learning every trail, stream, and tree on that land until it felt like a living extension of myself. Fletcher's farm was our only neighbor. We'd help him mend fences, he'd help us bale hay. No drama, no nonsense, no petty rule-obsessed committees wielding fines like candy, just neighbors, just peace. Then life did what life does. My parents got older, time moved faster, and eventually, both of them passed, leaving the land my childhood, my sanctuary to me. Even then, things stayed quiet for a few years. The road remained as reliable as ever, winding past Fletcher's property and up to mine. No gates, no problems, no Karen. But peaceful places never stay peaceful. Someone always smells opportunity. It started with rumors, survey stakes showing up farther downhill, trucks unloading lumber, and contractors making noise about future development. I drove down there one afternoon to see what was going on, and a young guy in a hard hat told me they were building a beautiful community with modern homes, shared amenities, and a homeowners association designed for maximum harmony. Harmony? That was the first red flag. The second was when Old Man Fletcher passed away. His kids lived out of state and had no interest in farming, so they sold the entire 200-acre spread to the highest bidder, and that's when the real trouble rolled in, disguised as progress. A freshly incorporated HOA with shiny brochures, matching signs, and manicured smiles. Overnight, the quiet gravel path became a construction zone. Dump trucks rumbled through, bulldozers pushed earth like angry giants, and new houses rose out of the ground like mushrooms after rain. I tried not to worry. After all, my easement was legal, unconditional, untouchable. But trouble has a way of finding you, especially when it wears perfume, carries a clipboard, and believes rules matter more than people. The first time Karen showed up at my property, she didn't even bother to call ahead, just marched up my driveway in her perfectly ironed blazer, heels crunching gravel like she was stomping out a rebellion. She introduced herself as the HOA president, acting president, she emphasized, as if that gave her royal authority instead of a temporary title. she said. The new community was designed to be exclusive, peaceful, and controlled. She explained that the residents were concerned about unregulated vehicles using their internal roads. Unregulated? That was the word she used for me, the person who had lived there since before the HOA even existed. Then she made her offer. HOA wanted to purchase my easement for $25, and assist me in building an entirely new road on the east side of my property, which would require cutting through woods, crossing a ravine, flattening uneven terrain, and essentially carving 2 new miles of road out of pure wilderness. She smiled like she was offering me a winning lottery ticket, not a financial death sentence. I tried to stay polite. I explained the history. I explained the legality. And most importantly, I explained that my easement wasn't for sale. The smile slid off her face like wax from a candle. Her voice turned sharper. Well, our community won't appreciate cars driving through. We need order. We need consistency. If you won't work with us, things could get complicated. I looked her right in the eye and said, then maybe your HOA shouldn't have bought land with a recorded easement on it. She didn't like that, not one bit. After that day, every time I drove down the gravel road, I'd see HOA construction workers watching me like I was trespassing on their private kingdom. Karen would stand on porches with her arms crossed, tapping a pen against her clipboard like she was keeping score of my existence. But I wasn't worried. I had the law, I had history, and I had a lifetime of knowing that road better than anyone. Besides, what could an HOA possibly do? Plenty, apparently. Over the next few weeks, little inconveniences started piling up. Piles of gravel mysteriously blocking parts of the road, workers accidentally leaving equipment in inconvenient places, trucks taking their sweet time moving out of the way, people pretending not to hear me when I asked them to clear the path. Karen never said a word, she just watched, always watching. Still, none of that prepared me for the day. Everything changed when I finally turned the corner and saw that massive steel gate blocking the only way into my home. But even before that moment, even before the confrontation, I remember having this feeling deep in my chest that the HOA wasn't done. Something was coming, something big, and I had no idea yet how far Karen was willing to go to enforce her imaginary rules. If I had known, maybe I would have taken pictures sooner. Maybe I would have been ready. But sometimes you don't get to prepare for the storm. Sometimes the storm prepares itself and parks a steel gate across your damn road. Karen didn't show up alone the second time she came to my property. She arrived in a spotless white SUV with the HOA logo slapped on the door like a badge of authority. 2 other HOA board members, both wearing matching polos, walked behind her, stiff as fence posts, as if they'd rehearsed the entrance. I was standing by my workshop at the time, repairing a busted hinge, when I heard the car doors slam. There's a certain kind of confidence people get when they believe a clipboard gives them power. Karen had that look, chin up, lips tight, strutting across my gravel like she owned the ground beneath her. "Good morning," she called out, her voice bright in the way a neon sign is bright, too artificial, too impossible to ignore. I wiped my hands on a rag. "Morning. What can I do for you?" "Oh, this won't take long," she said, which was immediately a lie. Karen didn't do anything quickly unless she was rushing to control someone. She flipped open her clipboard and gave me a smile that felt like a dentist showing off a drill. As I mentioned before, the HOA would like to discuss the easement situation and come to a mutual agreement. Our residents have expressed concern, considerable concern, about the increased traffic. I almost laughed. Increased traffic? I drove my truck down that road twice a day. These people had moving crews, landscapers, contractors, Amazon vans, and God knows what else driving through every hour. And somehow I was the problem. "I live here," I said. "I've lived here since before any of you arrived. My parents lived here. The easement is legal and permanent. I'm not giving it up." Her smile didn't break, but it thinned. "We're simply asking for cooperation." "Cooperation," I replied, "usually means both sides benefit. You're asking me to give up my only road. We're asking you to adapt to a growing community," she corrected, as if I were a stubborn child refusing to share toys. One of the board members, tall guy with a clipboard of his own, clearly a clipboard enthusiast, cleared his throat. "The HOA is developing plans to reduce unnecessary traffic. We can't have non-residents driving through private property. This community values peace. I value electricity. I snapped before I could stop myself. And water, and internet. Funny enough, all of those utilities run under that private property you're talking about. He blinked like I'd spoken in another language. Karen didn't blink at all. We can help you create a new access point, a beautiful new road on the east side, much more scenic, much more private. We'll even contribute $25, 000. 25,000 won't build 10 feet of road through that terrain, I said. You've seen the ravine, you know what this land looks like. Karen shrugged, like she couldn't be bothered with geology. Then you can cover the rest. There it was, the truth behind the polite tone. They wanted me out of their way, literally and figuratively. They didn't care about cooperation. They cared about control. When I didn't answer, she snapped her clipboard shut, sharp enough to startle a bird out of a tree. We're trying to avoid conflict, but the HOA makes decisions based on the best interest of the community. I hope you'll reconsider our offer. I won't, I said. She stared me down, her eyes cold and unblinking. Then she turned on her heel and strode back to her SUV, her board members scuttling behind her like anxious ducks. The moment the engine started, I knew she wasn't finished with me. Over the next few weeks, tensions simmered like a pot left too long on a stove. Construction traffic intensified. Trucks blocked the easement road for longer periods. Workers moved slower whenever I approached, almost daring me to complain. I'd catch glimpses of Karen standing on her porch with binoculars, or peeking out from behind her blinds like some sort of self-appointed watch commander. Then the letters began. Each envelope was the same, white, stiff, stamped with the HOA logo like a warning label. Inside were statements filled with passive-aggressive concerns, all worded as if the HOA had divine authority over local geography. One letter read, "Residents have observed you driving at unsafe speeds on community roads." Another, "Your presence on private HOA-managed streets has caused discomfort among homeowners. My presence, on a road that legally belonged to me before their homes even existed?" I tossed every letter into the same drawer. I called it my Karen pile. Still, I kept my cool. No yelling, no threats, no drama. But Karen mistook calm for weakness, and that was her biggest mistake. One afternoon, as I was coming down the road toward my property, I noticed something strange, construction flags marking new trenches. I stopped my truck, got out, and followed the flags. They ran along the easement, deeper than before, wider, too. A group of workers was lowering a massive new water line into the ground. I approached the foreman. "What's this?" I asked. "Oh, HOA expansion," he said casually. "They're upgrading the utilities to handle all the new homes." "Along this easement?" "Yep, right under it. Already paid for, by HOA money, without consulting me, without asking permission, without acknowledging that these utility lines existed only because the easement allowed them." My annoyance sharpened into suspicion. If Karen was willing to build new infrastructure on my easement, what else was she planning? I didn't have to wait long to find out. One morning, while checking fences along the northern tree line, I heard drilling. Not normal construction drilling, metal on metal drilling, the kind you hear at auto shops or welding stations. I followed the noise until I reached the very start of the easement road, the entrance closest to the new HOA subdivision. And that's when I saw it. A crew of workers, all wearing HOA vests, installing steel posts, big heavy ones, reinforced. Designed to hold weight, a stack of metal panels lay nearby, the kind typically used for heavy-duty security gates. I stepped forward. "Excuse me, what is this?" The workers froze. The foreman stepped up, installing a new community gate. "On this road?" "Yes, sir, HOA orders." I shook my head. "You can't. This road is—" Before I could finish, I heard the crunch of tires behind me. Karen's SUV rolled up. Of course, she got out, wearing sunglasses and an expression of smug satisfaction. "Beautiful, isn't it? We wanted something elegant, something secure. You can't put a gate here," I said, keeping my voice even. "This is my easement. It's an HOA road," she corrected. "We're simply exercising our right to control traffic. It's for the safety of our residents. You're blocking my only way home." "You'll find another," she said with a shrug. "It's a big property. Lots of potential access points. That's not how this works." But she wasn't listening. She never listened. The foreman glanced at her, got a small nod, and signaled the crew to continue installing the gate. I felt heat rising in my chest. the kind that comes when someone openly dares you to stop them. But I didn't shout, I didn't push, I didn't swing. I pulled out my phone, I took photos, I took videos, every screw, every bolt, every panel. Karen laughed softly. Go ahead and document it. HOA rules are very clear. She had no idea, no clue, not the faintest understanding of the legal disaster she had just created. But I did, and I knew the storm was coming. The morning after the workers installed the steel posts, I drove up the road expecting another confrontation. Instead, what greeted me was worse. The gate was finished, solid, heavy, locked with a brand new keypad system. A shiny black box blinked on the side, waiting for access codes I clearly didn't have. Metal bars stretched from one end of the road to the other, sealing off the only path like a prison door. A laminated HOA notice hung from the center: community access restricted, HOA residents and approved vehicles only. Approved vehicles. My own truck wasn't approved to reach my own home. I stepped out and tested the gate, shaking it hard. It didn't budge. This wasn't some flimsy decorative HOA gate. They had installed a legitimate fortification. Thick steel, cemented posts, industrial hinges. They meant business. I immediately called Karen. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. By the fourth call, I wasn't even expecting an answer anymore. I drove around to the temporary construction entrance. Tried there, blocked. Another locked barrier, smaller, but still locked. I got out of my truck, stared at the gate, and felt something sharp twist inside my chest. It wasn't anger yet. It was disbelief, shock, that someone could be bold or stupid enough to seal a man off from his own property like he was trespassing on his own life. Eventually, I parked on the shoulder of the highway, grabbed my backpack, and started walking. 2 miles through the woods, over brush, under leaning trees, across uneven slopes, a trek nobody should have to take just to get home. I reached the house covered in sweat and scratches, exhausted, furious, and that's when I realized something. If I didn't fight this immediately, Karen would think she'd won. That afternoon, I called my attorney, Sarah Chen. If Karen was a steel gate, Sarah was a battering ram, sharp, relentless, and impossible to ignore. Sarah listened quietly as I explained everything. The easement, the threats, the increased traffic concerns, the construction, the gate, every detail. She didn't interrupt once, but when I finished, she exhaled a slow breath and said, "You're kidding. I wish. You have a recorded easement. Yes. Permanent. Yes. Documented utility rights. Everything from power to water. And HOA just locked you out. Like, I'm a stray dog." She laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was legally ridiculous. "Okay," she said, "send me the documents. I'm going to ruin their week." I scanned everything, sent it all over, and waited. 2 hours later, she called back. "You're fine," she said calmly. "They're absolutely, unquestionably, 1000% in the wrong. What do? We give them a chance to fix it. I'm drafting a formal demand letter." Sarah was a surgeon with words sharp, precise, lethal. She wrote a letter that made my jaw drop. It wasn't rude, it wasn't emotional, it was pure legal fire. It listed every clause, every right, every consequence. She gave them 48 hours to remove the gate or face a lawsuit for violating a recorded easement. When she emailed it to Karen and the HOA board, she CC'd their legal department too. Game on. It didn't take long for them to respond. The next evening, I received an email from the HOA lawyer, a man named Spencer, who apparently thought arrogance counted as legal strategy. The email claimed the easement might not apply to modern roadways, that the development constituted a change in conditions, and that I should seek alternative access routes to maintain harmony with the community. Alternative access routes. They meant the forest hill that nearly broke my ankle earlier that day. Sarah replied with 2 sentences. "There are no alternative access routes. Your client is landlocking my client's property, which is illegal." Their lawyer sent a longer, more defensive reply. Sarah sent an even shorter one. By the next morning, she was filing for an emergency injunction with the county court. Meanwhile, I still couldn't use the road. I had to park at a small dirt clearing near the highway and hike in again, this time with groceries. Bags cutting into my palms, squirrels watching me like I was some wandering lunatic. Halfway through the woods, I muttered to myself, "Karen better pray we don't get a thunderstorm." And just my luck we did. Rain soaked me from head to toe. Mud clung to my boots, my bags tore, I slipped twice, when I stumbled onto my own porch like a half-drowned bear. I swear I could hear Karen's voice echoing in the distance, lecturing me about HOA regulations while sipping overpriced herbal tea. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, glaring out into the wet darkness beyond my window. I felt anger hot, sharp, righteous. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a neighborly disagreement. This was someone abusing power because they thought rules mattered more than human beings. But as angry as I was, something else nagged at the back of my mind. A memory. My father once said, "When someone tries to take your road, make sure you remember everything that road is connected to." The next morning, I dug through my parents' old file cabinet, faded papers, handwritten notes, maps, deeds, old photographs, and there, tucked between two envelopes, I found the full utility map for the property and all connected lines. Electricity ran under the easement, water ran under the easement, internet cables. Under the easement, I grabbed a highlighter and traced every line. All of them led to one realization. The HOA wasn't just blocking my road, they were using the easement to run their entire neighborhood. Sarah called an hour later. "Judge wants a hearing in 2 days. Be ready." I told her what I'd discovered. She went quiet for a second, then she burst out laughing. "They're using your utilities," she said, "under your easement while blocking your access. That's golden." "They don't know," I said. "Oh, they're going to know," she replied. "I'm amending the filing. This just turned into a damages claim." Over the next 48 hours, things escalated quickly. Sarah contacted the power company. They sent an engineer. He walked the lines, checked the panels, reviewed the connection points, and confirmed everything. "Yep," he said, "their grid ties directly into these lines. If these went down, their whole subdivision would go dark." I raised an eyebrow. "So, they're dependent on my easement?" "Oh, absolutely. Everything flows through here." He wrote a formal report. Sarah included it. The storm wasn't coming anymore. It had arrived. The HOA didn't remove the gate. They didn't apologize. They didn't negotiate. They didn't even acknowledge the legal papers taped to the steel bars. And that's how I knew something else. Karen really, truly believed she was untouchable, but she was about to learn something she'd never forgotten. An HOA might control a neighborhood, but they don't control an easement, and they sure as hell don't control me. 2 days later, I stood in the packed hallway of the county courthouse, watching HOA members shuffle around in their matching polo shirts like anxious penguins. Karen was there too, of course. She was talking to her lawyer with the stiff posture of someone who believed the law existed solely to protect her preferences. She kept adjusting her pearl necklace, glancing around as if she expected applause for simply showing up. I didn't approach her. I didn't look her in the eye. I just waited with Sarah, who was calmly flipping through documents like she was reading brunch menus instead of preparing for legal battle. "Relax," she said. "They dug their own grave." "I know," I replied, "but Karen doesn't exactly strike me as the learns her lesson type." She will today. When the courtroom doors opened, we filed in. The judge, a stern older man with half-moon glasses and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense, entered shortly after. Everyone rose. He sat, papers shuffled, and then it began. Karen's lawyer went first. A tall man in a sleek suit with a voice as smooth as dish soap. He launched into a monologue about development, community needs, and modernizing infrastructure. He argued that the easement might no longer apply, that property boundaries had shifted, and that the evolving neighborhood necessitated new restrictions on non-resident access. He talked for 5 minutes straight, waving his hands like some sort of HOA conductor, directing a symphony of excuses. The judge listened with growing impatience. When he finally finished, the judge turned to Sarah. "Ms. Chen," she rose, calm and lethal. "Your Honor, this is simple." She placed the easement document on the desk with a satisfying thump. A permanent, recorded easement, unambiguous, irrevocable, binding on any future property owners. Another document. Photographs of the gate blocking my client's sole access to his home. Another. Utility maps showing that electricity, water, and communications for the HOA community all run under the easement they claim doesn't exist. Another. A report from the utility engineer confirming the HOA is using these lines. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't rant, she let the evidence speak. Then she dropped the hammer. "Your Honor, Not only has the HOA illegally landlocked my client, they are actively benefiting from the easement they are denying him. They installed a gate preventing his access while simultaneously drawing utilities from the same easement to power their entire community. The judge lifted his eyebrows. Is this accurate? Karen's lawyer cleared his throat. We dispute the applicability of that easement. The judge cut him off. That's not what I asked. Are you using those utilities? The lawyer hesitated, glanced nervously at Karen, then muttered, Yes, the community currently uses those lines. The courtroom fell silent. The judge leaned forward, folding his hands. So, your client blocked the easement while relying on it for essential services. Karen opened her mouth like she wanted to defend herself, but no words came out. She looked like a goldfish in a pink blazer. Sarah stepped in again. Your Honor? My client hiked through the woods for 2 miles in a thunderstorm because the HOA installed a steel barrier on his legal access. They ignored a demand letter. They ignored the law. They ignored basic decency. The judge nodded slowly, absorbing every word. Finally, he spoke. Remove the gate within 24 hours. Karen's shoulders stiffened. Failure to comply, the judge continued, will result in a fine of $10,000 per day. Karen's jaw dropped so hard I thought it might hit the floor. Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge raised a hand. I've heard enough. This was a blatant violation of property rights. And just like that, the gavel fell. Hearing adjourned, Karen didn't look at me not even once. Her lawyer whispered something to her urgently, but she seemed frozen, staring straight ahead like she'd just watched her HOA kingdom start to crumble. As people filed out, Sarah nudged me. Congratulations. That was the easy part. The easy part, I repeated, incredulous. Oh, absolutely. They still owe for damages, income lost, legal fees, emotional distress, if we want to push hard. And let's not forget, your utilities are the backbone of their entire community. They're lucky you're not shutting them off. I didn't know whether to laugh or be horrified. We walked out of the courtroom into warm afternoon sunlight. I felt 10 pounds lighter. The weight of weeks of frustration, anger, exhaustion finally loosened. But of course, the HOA didn't take the loss with grace. When I drove back to the easement road that evening, I saw 3 HOA board members surrounding the gate like confused raccoons trying to solve a puzzle. None of them knew how to take it down. One was poking it with a screwdriver, another was filming it on his phone like it was a crime scene. Karen stood off to the side, arms crossed, face tight with fury. Her expression was a masterpiece, equal parts rage, embarrassment, and disbelief that she wasn't the most powerful person in the room anymore. When she saw me, her glare sharpened. You think you're clever, she snapped. I rolled down my window. No, I just think I know how to read legal documents. You're disrupting our entire community. You locked a man out of his own property. You could have worked with us. I tried. You wanted control. She sputtered, unable to form a coherent comeback. By midnight, the gate was gone, not unlocked, not propped open, gone loaded onto a flatbed truck and hauled away like a broken toy. A few HOA members watched from their porches, whispering. Some looked embarrassed, others looked afraid. One even gave me a small nod, like he was silently cheering on the victory. The road was open again. But something had fundamentally changed. Karen had lost the first battle, but she wasn't someone who surrendered. No, she was someone who doubled down. And she did exactly that. 2 mornings later, a fresh letter arrived. This one wasn't passive-aggressive. It wasn't sugar-coated. It was frantic. The HOA was demanding an urgent meeting to resolve disputes amicably. They wanted to discuss a path forward. They wanted to avoid escalating legal conflicts. Translation: they were scared. That afternoon, Sarah called. They contacted me too. They want to negotiate. I'm not interested, I said. They crossed a line. You should come to the meeting, she advised. Not to agree, to listen. So I did. We met at their community clubhouse, a shiny new building with oversized windows and a ridiculous chandelier. Karen sat at the center of a long table, hands clasped like she expected us to pray. She started talking about community cohesion and collective harmony, and how the HOA wanted to find mutually beneficial solutions. When she finished, I leaned forward and said, "There's no solution except following the law." Karen's smile flickered. "Surely we can find no, but, no, Sarah slid a document across the table. "We've filed for damages." Karen paled. The board members looked like someone had told them their property values dropped 90%. And that was only the beginning. For the first time since the HOA formed, Karen didn't have control. And that scared her more than anything. I thought the meeting would calm things down, maybe even push the HOA to back off. But Karen wasn't wired that way. Some people learn from mistakes, others burn from them. Karen belonged to the second category, angrier, pettier, and more determined to win. Even when she was standing on ground that wasn't hers, within a week of the court order, I noticed HOA members walking around the easement road with clipboards, measuring tape, and worried expressions. They huddled in small groups, whispering frantically. Every time they saw me pass by, they'd fall silent and scatter like pigeons spooked by a truck. Then came the new construction. Not a gate this time, something subtler, but still illegal. One morning, I spotted two men digging near the utility boxes right on the easement corridor. I walked up and asked what they were doing. The older one, a grizzled man in a neon vest, pointed at a blueprint. HOA sent us to install a secondary shutoff valve. Says it'll help regulate water pressure for the community. For the community? I repeated, meaning the HOA subdivision, the one using my utility easement. That's what they said. And they told you to install a shutoff valve on my easement without permission. The man blinked, wasn't aware we needed permission. I inhaled slowly, trying not to blow a gasket. "You do." He studied me, looked at the ground, then muttered, "I'll call my boss," before signaling the crew to stop. They packed up and left, but not before I took photos, lots of photos from every angle. I sent them all to Sarah. Her reply came within minutes. "They really don't know when to stop. This strengthens our case. Document everything." I did exactly that. The HOA kept pushing. Sometimes small things, workers accidentally blocking the road, other times bigger rumors spreading that I was endangering the community by refusing to work with the HOA. I even overheard one homeowner say, "Why doesn't he just move? He's clearly not a good fit for this neighborhood." A neighborhood I didn't even live in, a neighborhood that had grown around my land, a neighborhood that used MY utilities. Still, the real escalation came the following month. Sarah called me one morning, sounding downright chipper. The judge approved our damages claim, court date set for next week. That was good news for me, terrible news for Karen. When word got out, the HOA leadership spiraled into full-blown crisis mode. Emergency meetings, mass emails, community alerts. A few residents even approached me quietly and apologized for the board's behavior. One guy told me, "Look, man, Karen thinks she's a sheriff, but she doesn't represent all of us." I thanked him, but honestly, the apology didn't fix much. The day of the damages hearing arrived. The courthouse parking lot was nearly full. Apparently, HOA drama was the small-town equivalent of a blockbuster premiere. People filed into the courtroom, whispering like they were about to watch a season finale. Karen entered wearing her brightest pink blazer. Her expression was a tight, forced smile, stretched across a face that had clearly forgotten how to relax. Her lawyer looked equally strained, clutching a stack of folders like they were flotation devices on a sinking ship. Sarah, on the other hand, walked in like she owned the building, calm, steady, confident. She gave me a nod, ready, as I'll ever be. When the hearing began, Karen's lawyer tried a new strategy: sympathy. He talked about financial strain, miscommunication, and honest mistakes. He insisted the gate wasn't meant to restrict essential access, but simply to ensure security for residents. It was such a ridiculous argument that even some HOA members shook their heads. Sarah waited patiently for them to finish. Then she presented everything: my photos, the videos, the utility reports, the email threads, the timeline, the court order they ignored, and most importantly, the financial damages. Lost rental income because tenants could not access the property, emergency maintenance fees, legal costs, physical hardship of being forced to hike through the forest, and potential risks caused by HOA tampering with utility lines. Sarah outlined every detail with surgical precision. Then she ended with a simple, devastating sentence. The HOA didn't just block my client's legal access, they knowingly and repeatedly violated court orders and used his utility easement for profit while obstructing his rights. The judge shifted his glasses and stared directly at Karen. "Is this accurate?" Karen tried to speak, truly tried. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out except a faint squeak. Like a balloon slowly deflating, her lawyer jumped in with a shaky, "We respectfully deny intentional wrongdoing." The judge cut him off. "Intent doesn't change the impact, and the impact is severe." He took out a sheet of paper. "For the record, the court rules in favor of the plaintiff." Karen stiffened. "The HOA will pay the plaintiff $50,000 in damages." Gasps swept the courtroom. "Additionally, the HOA is responsible for covering all attorney fees." Karen's eyes widened. "And a permanent injunction is issued. The HOA shall never again restrict, alter, obstruct, or interfere with the plaintiff's easement in any form." Silence. Then the gavel came down like thunder. Karen wilted into her chair. Her lawyer rubbed his forehead like a man contemplating alternate career paths. HOA members exchanged horrified glances. And me, I felt relief. A deep, satisfying exhale I'd been holding for months. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around Karen. One shoved a microphone toward her. "Do you have a comment about losing the case?" Karen snapped. "No comment," then stormed off toward her SUV. Sarah smirked. "Well, that went beautifully." "Better than beautifully," I said. "That was justice." But the story didn't end there. Victory brings out all sorts of new behaviors from all sorts of people. Some get humble, some get angry, and some get desperate. The HOA started sending polite emails, then overly friendly emails, then requests for collaboration. I ignored most of them, but the shift was obvious. They were afraid. They'd realized the easement wasn't a vulnerability for me. It was a vulnerability for them. Their entire infrastructure depended on it. Their water, their electricity, their internet, their entire glamorous, exclusive community lifestyle. Karen had pushed so hard to control me that she had overlooked the most important rule of power. If you grab the wrong lever, you might just pull the roof down on yourself. The HOA board grew quieter. Meetings became more private. Rumors circulated that homeowners were furious about legal fees, furious about Karen, furious about decreased property values. But the biggest storm was still ahead, because when desperate people feel cornered, they try to buy their way out, and that's exactly what happened next. The shift in attitude from the HOA was almost comical. They had gone from threatening me, blocking my road, and pretending the easement didn't exist, to suddenly acting like we were long-lost buddies who just needed a friendly chat to clear the air. I wasn't buying it for a second. The first sign of their panic came in the form of a carefully worded email from the HOA board. "We value positive relationships with all community neighbors. We hope to work collaboratively to restore goodwill." Goodwill? From the same people who locked me out of my home in the rain. I deleted the email. The next day, a pastel-colored envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was an invitation printed on glossy cardstock to a HOA community brunch, complete with mimosas, pastries, and open dialogue. The brunch was scheduled for Sunday at 10 a.m. The card mentioned encouraging reconciliation, and of course, it was mandatory for all HOA board members. I wasn't an HOA member. I wasn't required to show up. They just desperately hoped I would. I tossed that invitation into my fire pit. The night after that, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring out, assuming it was a telemarketer. Then a voicemail came through Karen's voice, sounding shockingly gentle. "Hi, it's Karen. I was hoping we could talk. I think we got off on the wrong foot. Maybe we could meet and find a mutually beneficial solution." I deleted the voicemail. Nothing in the world could have prepared Karen for being powerless. She was used to being obeyed. She was used to people flinching when she raised her voice, or bending to her HOA rules, or desperately trying to avoid fines. She wasn't used to losing, and after losing in front of an entire courtroom, she was spiraling. But I didn't expect her to show up at my house. 3 days after the hearing, I heard gravel crunching outside. I stepped onto my porch and saw Karen standing there in a tailored blazer, hair neatly styled, wearing a polite but strained smile. Her SUV idled behind her, and she stood with her hands clasped like she was the host of a talk show, about to reveal a grand prize. "Good morning," she began. I crossed my arms. "Morning. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. You're standing on my porch, uninvited. So yes, you are." She flinched, but regained composure quickly. She was trying so hard to play nice, it almost looked painful. "I came because I believe we can resolve everything," she said softly. Everything is already resolved, I replied. The court resolved it. Yes, of course. But perhaps we could, resolve things further. I raised an eyebrow. Meaning? She took a deep breath. The HOA would like to make you a formal offer. For your property? I stared at her for a moment, unsure if I'd heard correctly. You want to buy my property? Karen brightened, thinking she'd found the right button to push. Yes, exactly. The HOA believes that if you were no longer dependent on the easement, it would remove any future conflict. And this is important, we're prepared to offer well above market value. I burst out laughing. I couldn't help it. The absurdity was too much. Karen's smile wavered. I don't see what's funny. You blocked my road, tried to force me to build a new one, dragged me through hell, and now your solution is that I should sell my land because you made a mistake. Karen pressed her lips together in a thin line. The community has concerns, property values, safety, stability. If you were willing to sell, everything could go back to normal. Normal for who? I shot back. For you. For the HOA. For everyone, she insisted with a desperate edge. What's the offer? I asked. Mostly out of curiosity, she straightened her shoulders. $400,000. I blinked. Then I laughed again, harder this time. Because that number confirmed something important. Karen and the entire HOA were terrified. My property was worth far more than that, and they knew it. But they also knew they were stuck. My easement wasn't just a road, it was the artery that fed their entire neighborhood with electricity, water, internet, everything. They didn't want my land because they wanted to build on it. They wanted it because they wanted to shut me up. When I stopped laughing, I leaned on the porch railing and said, Karen, let me make this clear. I'm not selling. Not for $400,000. Not for $4 million. This land has been in my family for 50 years. I'm not leaving because your HOA didn't do its homework. Her face hardened. You're being unreasonable. No, Karen, I'm being logical. You're the one being unreasonable. She stared at me with that familiar mix of disbelief and anger. For the first time since I'd met her, I saw something else behind her eyes. Fear. Real fear. The fear of losing control. We can't continue like this, she hissed. I agree. So, how about you follow the law? The HOA has rights too. Not over me. She clenched her fists, fighting the urge to explode the way she wanted to. But she knew she couldn't. Not now, not after losing in court, not after failing so publicly. She inhaled deeply, exhaled shakily. Fine, but don't blame me if the community views you as the source of conflict. Karen, I said, your community has been a source of conflict since day one. She turned sharply, walked to her SUV, and slammed the doors so hard the whole frame shook. Then she sped down the road, dust rising behind her like smoke trailing a retreating army. I watched her go and couldn't help feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. Winning felt good, but the war wasn't quite over. A few days later, the HOA board sent a letter, not a friendly one this time. A stiff, formal statement accusing me of disrupting harmony, refusing reasonable negotiation, and creating unnecessary tension for residents. My favorite line was, "Your refusal to collaborate places burdens on the entire community." I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. I sent the letter to Sarah. She replied, "They're delusional. Ignore it. Ignore it." I did. For the next week, life was quiet, suspiciously quiet. HOA construction slowed. No mysterious trucks blocked the road. No workers tampered with anything. Karen wasn't seen patrolling with her clipboard. Most residents avoided eye contact when I passed by, as if Karen had instructed them not to stare at the enemy across the easement. Then one evening, right around sunset, I heard tires crunching on gravel again. I stepped outside, expecting another surprise, but instead found one of the HOA board members, a younger man named Greg, standing awkwardly near his SUV. He held a sealed envelope. "Hey," he said nervously, "what do you want?" "I'm, delivering this from the board," I sighed. "Another letter." "Sort of," he said, "but listen, I just want you to know, not all of us agree with Karen. A lot of people are angry. We didn't vote for half the things she's done." I studied him for a moment. He looked genuine, nervous but genuine. "What's in the envelope?" I asked. He swallowed. "A revised settlement proposal." I nearly groaned. She really doesn't learn, does she? Greg gave a defeated shrug. She's convinced if you sell, everything will magically fix itself. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single page offering a new and improved buyout. $500, 000, $500,000. I laughed quietly but truly. If $400, 000 meant they were scared, $500, 000 meant they were panicking. I folded the paper and handed it back. No, I said. Not now, not ever. Greg nodded. I figured you'd say that. Then why come? He looked down at his shoes. Because, you're right. She's been wrong from the start, and people are starting to realize it. I watched him drive away, the last sliver of daylight fading behind the trees. For the first time, I felt something shift not in me, but in the HOA itself. Cracks were forming, Karen's grip was loosening, the community she controlled was turning on her, and I hadn't even lifted a finger. The funniest part, the easement, the very thing she hated, was the reason she couldn't win. It was the one thing she would never be able to remove, reroute, rewrite, or reshape. The HOA wanted peace, I wanted respect, and Karen wanted control. Only one of us had the law behind them, and she was about to learn that some battles can't be won with clipboards and threats. Some battles are won by simply standing your ground. And mine was 25 acres of it. The week after Greg delivered that pathetic $500, 000 buyout offer, I expected Karen to retreat, lick her wounds, and maybe, just maybe, let the embarrassment sink in long enough for her to back off. But I underestimated her capacity for denial. Karen's pride wasn't just a personality trait, it was a disease. And losing to me, a man she considered, outside her community, was apparently the worst infection she'd ever suffered. But despite her bruised ego, the HOA seemed quieter than usual. No new letters, no construction flags appearing mysteriously, no workers tampering with utility boxes, and Karen, she vanished from sight. I didn't see her hovering on porches with binoculars, or patrolling the subdivision in her SUV like an over-caffeinated security guard. The silence was suspicious, but welcome. For the first time in months, I sat on my porch one evening with a cold beer and actually felt free. Then, as the sun dipped low, a thought hit me. Maybe this was over. Maybe the HOA board had finally forced Karen to stand down. Maybe they'd realized the obvious. Keep pushing, keep losing. But optimism and HOA rarely go hand in hand. 2 days later, I received a certified letter from the county recorder's office. I signed for it, stepped inside, and opened it carefully. Inside was a copy of a document the HOA had recently attempted to file. My stomach tightened. It was an official request to amend property boundaries around the easement area. In simpler terms, they were trying to redraw the map. Karen wasn't trying to buy my land anymore, she was trying to legally suffocate it. I marched straight to my truck, drove to the county office, and demanded an explanation. The clerk, a tired woman with glasses hanging from a beaded chain, looked up the file. "This was submitted by your neighboring HOA," she said, adjusting her glasses. "But we put it on hold because it conflicts with an existing invariant easement." "Invariant," I repeated, "meaning permanent, meaning unchangeable," she confirmed. "Your easement predates all surrounding developments. They have no authority to alter any boundary affecting it." I'm guessing they didn't know that. Oh, they knew. Karen just thought rules bent for her. I walked out of the office with a copy of the stopped request and immediately forwarded it to Sarah. Her response came in seconds. "They're digging their own grave. I'll take it from here." By now, even homeowners inside the HOA were fed up. Word had spread about the lawsuit, the damages, the injunction, the legal fees, the embarrassing courtroom loss. Some were angry, others were ashamed. One man even approached me while I was fueling my truck at the gas station. "Listen," he said awkwardly, "I'm sorry about everything. This wasn't what we signed up for." Karen's intense. Intense, I echoed. "That's one word for it." "She's lost support," he admitted. "The last board meeting was a mess. People want her gone, and yet she's still here," I replied. "For now," he said. "But the next election is coming, an HOA election." I had to smile. If there was one thing Karen loved more than rules, it was power. And losing power, that would hurt her more deeply than any lawsuit ever could. Still, her desperation wasn't done showing. That weekend, as I drove down the easement road, I saw something that almost made me hit the brakes hard enough to leave skid marks. Karen, standing in the middle of the road, waving me down like she was directing traffic. I stopped, rolled down the window, and stayed inside the truck. "You and I need to talk," she said, breathing fast like she'd sprinted to intercept me. "No," I said, "we really don't." "Yes, we do," she insisted, stepping closer. "You're being impossible. I'm being lawful. You're being stubborn. I'm being a landowner whose rights you violated." She huffed and looked away for a second, then swallowed her pride, whatever small amount she had left. "Fine," she said. "I'll raise the offer, 600,000. I almost choked, not because of the money, but because she genuinely thought the solution to all this was for me to disappear. "No," I said flatly. She blinked hard. "Why not? That's more than fair. It's not about money, Karen. It never was. It's about principle. It's about family. It's about my father, my mother, and the land they left me. And it's about you thinking you can trample over people because you have a title and a clipboard." Her jaw clenched. "You're ruining everything." "No," I said. "I'm stopping you from ruining everything." She pointed a finger at me, trembling. "You think you've won. You think this is over." "It is for me," I said. "But it won't be for you, not when your entire community sees who caused this mess." "Endos." Her face cracked something between rage and humiliation. Then she spun around and stormed off, nearly tripping over her own heels as she stomped away. I watched her go, feeling a strange mix of pity and satisfaction. Karen had built her kingdom on control, fear, and intimidation. And the moment someone refused to bow, her empire started to crumble. And crumble it did. The next HOA meeting became the stuff of local legend. Residents shouted, people waved papers. Someone recorded the whole thing on their phone, and it made its way around town within hours. "Why are we paying legal fees for a road we don't own? He had the easement long before we were here. You let Karen push this too far. Why did she tamper with utilities? Why didn't anyone stop her? This board is incompetent." I wasn't there, but I heard everything through Greg later. He told me Karen tried to defend herself, but no one was buying the excuses anymore. Homeowners wanted a leader, not a tyrant who dragged the entire community into debt and embarrassment. A week later, an HOA-wide announcement went out. Karen had resigned as HOA president. No explanation, no fanfare, just resignation. I didn't celebrate, I didn't gloat, I didn't even smile, because truthfully, the victory wasn't about watching her fall. It was about reclaiming peace. With Karen gone, the HOA extended something I never expected, a genuine apology. The new interim board reached out, not with threats, not with offers to buy my property, not with manipulations, just an apology, plain and simple. "We're sorry for everything," the email read. "We hope to rebuild trust and move forward respectfully." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. A week after that, Sarah called me with final news from the court. The damages were officially processed. The injunction was permanently filed. The case was closed. "Congratulations," she said warmly. "You did it." "No," I said, stepping onto my porch and breathing in the quiet evening air. "We did it. For the first time in a long time, I walked the easement road without looking over my shoulder, without worrying about gates, without thinking about Karen's SUV waiting around the bend. Peace, real peace, the kind I hadn't felt since before the HOA ever showed up. And as I gazed down the road toward the open fields and the endless sky, I realized something. Some battles you fight, some battles find you, and some battles, just like HOA, Karen, teach you exactly how far you're willing to stand your ground. In the end, standing up for my land wasn't just about a road or a gate, or even an HOA. It was about something deeper, knowing when to protect what matters. My parents left me more than property. They left me a responsibility to defend what's right, even when it's inconvenient, even when someone louder, richer, or more entitled tries to take it away. And here's the truth I learned. People like Karen don't just exist in HOAs, they show up everywhere at work, in neighborhoods, in life. People who think rules bend for them, people who mistake kindness for weakness, people who push until someone finally pushes back. But when you stand your ground, when you know the law, and when you refuse to be intimidated, you win more than a legal battle, you win your peace. So tell me, have you ever dealt with a Karen, an HOA, or someone who tried to walk all over you? Share your experience in the comments. I read every one. And if you enjoy true HOA justice stories like this, Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more wild, unbelievable HOA drama every week.